Oceania is a collective name for the islands scattered throughout most of the Pacific Ocean. The term embraces the entire insular region between Asia and the Americas. In its most restricted meaning, Oceania includes more than 10,000 islands with a total land area, excluding Australia, consisting of approximately 317,700 square miles. Australia adds 2.97 million square miles to the equation, a very large difference indeed. Oceania has traditionally been divided into four parts: Australasia, which is Australia and New Zealand, Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. By 2000, about 12 million islanders lived in Oceania, excluding Australia, and many indigenous cultures were revolutionized by intensive contact with non-oceanic groups who had intruded from various parts of the Western world. The indigenous peoples of Oceania are Polynesians, Melanesians, Micronesians, Papuans, and Australian Aborigines. With the notable exception of Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, New Caledonia, and Guam, indigenous peoples make up the majority of the populations of Oceania. The populations are now mixed with European and Asian immigrants as well as many from the United States and other countries. Australia, which is the smallest continent but yet one of the largest countries on Earth, lies between the Pacific and Indian Oceans in the southern hemisphere. Australia is also the most populated Oceania country. The Australian Aborigines people, one of the two distinct groups of indigenous people of Australia, the other being the Torres Strait Islander people. It has long been conventionally held that Australia is the only continent where the entire indigenous population maintain a single kind of adaptation, hunting and gathering, into modern times. Many believe it is because of the harsh environment and climate of Australia. Along with the Aboriginal people, the Torres Strait Islanders were the first human inhabitants of Australia, and like the Aborigines, they have a close connection with their traditional lands and waterways with nature. However, the Torres Strait Islanders have their own cultural practices, languages, and beliefs that are distinct from those of the Aborigines. In the early 2010s, the Torres Strait Islander people constituted less than 1% of the total Australian population and about 1/10 of the total indigenous population of Australia. The majority of the population of Australia is now European, though mostly British in ancestry, and live predominantly in urban settings due to the harsh environment of Australia. Australia's government is identical to England's parliamentary system. New Zealand, or as the Maori call it, Aotearoa, is an island country in the South Pacific Ocean and is the most southwestern part of Polynesia. New Zealand is a remote land, one of the last sizable territories suitable for habitation to be populated and settled. It lies more than 1,000 miles southeast of Australia, its nearest neighbor. The country comprises two main islands, the North and South Islands, and a small number of islands, some of them hundreds of miles from the main group. New Zealand has spectacular glaciers, picturesque fjords, rugged mountains, vast plains, rolling hillsides, subtropical forest, volcanic plateaus, miles of coastline, and gorgeous sandy beaches. The North Island of New Zealand has a spine of mountain ranges running through the middle and the gentle rolling farmland on both sides. The central North Island is dominated by volcanic plateaus, and there are many subterranean volcanic activity going on in New Zealand. The native people of New Zealand are called the Maori. They are of Polynesian descent. They are known for their great navigation of waterways and boating skills. But European settlers make up the majority of the population now in New Zealand. Strange fact, sheep actually outnumber all humans on the island, for they are the large export source of income in New Zealand. Papua New Guinea's magnificent and varied scenery reflects a general recent geologic history in which the movements of the Earth's crust resulted in the collision of the northward moving Australian plate with the westward moving Pacific plate. Papua New Guinea's social composition is extremely complex. although most people are classified as Melanesian. Very small minorities of Micronesian and Polynesian societies can be found on some of the outlying islands and atolls, and as in the eastern Northern Pacific, these people have political structures headed by chiefs, a system seldom found among the Melanesian peoples of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is one of the countries in the world where it is no secret cannibalism has been practiced in the past and up until quite recently. The Korowai tribe is one of the last known tribes in the world to have been cannibals. Mountainous zone called the Highlands, extending from the west to the southeast, occupies the central part of the island of New Guinea. Some of the elevations reach up to 13,000 feet, the highest point being 14,793 feet at Mount Wilhelm. The north coast of the mainland, unlike the swampy coastal plains, drops sharply to the sea. The country's most northerly zone consists of complex, unstable volcanic arc in the Bismarck Sea. The steeply sloping mountains, exceptional rainfall, geologic instability in all except the most southerly areas, and the rapid growth of both population and commercial enterprise have combined to create some of the highest soil erosion rates in the world, rivaling those of the Himalayan region. Here you see a picture of deforestation in Papua New Guinea. That, coupled with slash and burn techniques for vegetation, and political instability due to uprisings and calls for independence has hindered the progress of Papua New Guinea as a people. Over 85% of the population is rural, with the remaining in light urban areas with the exception of the capital city. Papua New Guinea's constitution was adopted in 1975 and has been amended frequently since then. The country is a constitutional monarchy and a member of the Commonwealth. The British monarch, represented by a governor-general, is head of state, and the prime minister is the head of government. The unicameral national parliament is made of provincial and open electorates. Fiji is a country and also an archipelago in the South Pacific Ocean. It surrounds the Coral Sea, about 1,300 miles north of Auckland, New Zealand. This archipelago consists of 300 islands and 540 islets scattered over about 1 million square miles. Of the 300 islands, only about 100 are inhabited. The capital, Suva, is on the southeast coast of the largest island, Viti Levu, which is Great Fiji in Fijian. Almost half of Fiji's total area remains forested. While dry grasslands are found in western areas of the island, coconut palms are most common in coastal areas, as well as tropical fruits and vegetables can be grown almost anywhere. Much of the shoreline is composed of reefs and rocks and mangrove swamps on the eastern coasts. There are a few white sand swimming beaches because of the encircling reef and little surf. Most animals, including pigs, dogs, cattle, and a few horses, are domesticated. Mongooses were introduced to prey on snakes and rats. They are often seen. Although the indigenous Fijian people are usually classified as ethnically Melanesian, their social and political organization is closer to that of Polynesia, and there has been high level of intermarriage between Fijians and the Lao group of islands of eastern Fiji and the neighboring Polynesian islands of Tonga. Indigenous Fijians make up more than half of the population. About another 2/5 of the people are of Indian descent, most of whom are descendants of indentured laborers brought to work in the sugar industry. A small number of Indians, particularly in the commerce and in professions such as medicine and law, are descended from free migrants. English, Fijian, and Fijian Hindi were given equal status as official languages by the 1997 Constitution. The widely used Fijian language has many dialects. The one most commonly used is known as Buan Fijian and comes from Bau, an island that enjoyed political supremacy at the advent of colonial rule. Most people speak at least 2 languages, including English and their language of their own ethnic community. Sugar production is concentrated on the western side of Viti Levu and in the area around Labasa. The government-controlled Fiji Sugar Corporation has a monopoly on milling and marketing. The European Union is the biggest market for Fiji sugar. Fiji has a preferential trade agreement with the EU. For much of the country's post-independence period, sugar was Fiji's largest export, accounting for more than half of all exports. In the early 21st century, however, international pressure brought about reforms in the EU sugar pricing structure, which reduced Fiji's income from sugar. The Fijian industry was forced to institute its own structural changes, such as those aimed at increasing productivity in order to survive. In addition, the growth of the garment industry and tourism created a decline in sugar's relative importance to the economy. Also, Fiji is governed under a constitution adopted in 2013. Fiji achieved independence from Great Britain in 1970. Fiji has a parliamentary-style government with a president as head of state and a prime minister as the head of government. The Marshall Islands, officially known as the Republic of the Marshall Islands, is a country in the central Pacific Ocean. It consists of some of the most eastern islands of Micronesia. The Marshalls are composed of more than 1,200 islands and islets in two parallel chains of coral atolls, the Ratak, or sunrise, in the east, and the Ralek, or sunset, in the west. The chains lie about 125 miles apart and extend 800 miles northwest to southeast. None of the 29 low-lying coral atolls and the 5 coral islands in the Marshall Group rises more than 20 feet above high tide. The islands are coral caps set on the rims of submerged volcanoes rising from the ocean floor. The island units of the Marshalls are scattered over about 180,000 square miles of the Pacific. The largest atoll in the group and in the world is Kwajalein, which has a land area of only 6 square miles but surrounds a 655 square mile lagoon. Most of the Marshall Islands are true atolls, consisting of irregular oval-shaped coral reefs surrounding a lagoon. The islets lie along the coral reef. The islands and islets of the Ratak chain tend to be more heavily wooded than those of Ralik. Coconut and pandanus palms and breadfruit trees are principal vegetation. Soils are generally sandy and low in fertility. The native people of the Marshalls, the Marshallese, are Micronesians. The most populous atolls are Majuro and Kwajalein, which offers employment at the U.S. missile testing range. Together they have almost 3/4 of the country's total population. The rest of the population lives in traditional villages on the outer islands away from the two urban centers. The Republic's main sources of revenue are substantial U.S. subsidies under a compact of free association and the leasing of the land for U.S. missile testing range in Kwajalein. Employment and modern amenities at both Majuro and Kwajalein serve as magnets that draw people to the two urban centers. Under the Constitution adopted in 1979, the government consists of a president elected by a unicameral 33-member parliament known as the Netagela. The Council of Iroge Chiefs, or as it's called, has mainly a consultative function concerned with traditional laws and customs. The Marshall Islands were occupied by the United States in World War II. The Marshall Islands were also made part of the United Nations Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands under jurisdiction of the United States in 1947 till 1986, when the Trust Territory was dissolved by the U.S. government. After World War II, the Marshall Islands became a hotbed for nuclear test sites and weapons testing. After the populations were removed from other atolls, Bikini and Eniwetok served as an official testing ground for U.S. nuclear bombs from 1946 to 58. The test stopped in 58, and then cleanup efforts began in the late 60s. During the trial resettlement of the Bikinians, however, their atoll was found to be too contaminated for permanent habitation, and by the late 1970s, the people had to be evacuated again. The Eniwetok people were returned to their homeland, and a program to monitor Bikini was put in place, but has yet been inhabitable. The country of Palau is located in the western Pacific Ocean. It consists of some 340 coral and volcanic islands perched on the Kyushu Palau Ridge. Its major populated islands are Babelthwap, Koror, Malakal, Arakabasan, and Peleliu. The sparsely populated Kiri Angel Islands to the north of Balathop, and the race coral islands of Anguar, Sansotoral, Pulo, Ana, and Tobi south of Peleliu lie outside the barrier reef system. Koror Island, rising to 2,061 feet just in elevation alone, is home to Koror City, the largest population center and former capital. Melikiok, or Babelthwap, became the capital in October 2006. All but 6 of Palu's islands lie within an expansive lagoon enclosed by the barrier reef that stretches northeast to southwest for almost 70 miles. Babelthwap, the largest island, which is 153 square miles, is volcanic, mainly composed of andesite, which is bounded by thick mangrove forests, broken occasionally by sandy beaches on the east coast. Its highest point, Negerchelichus, in the northwest, is 794 feet high. Geologically, Palau sits on the Philippine Sea Plate only 30 miles west of the 26,200-foot-deep Palau Trench, the western boundary of the upthrusting Pacific Plate. Despite its close proximity to the subduction zone, Palau rarely experiences any earthquake activity. The islands were inhabited from 3,000 to 2,000 years ago by successive waves of Malays from Indonesia, Melanesians from New Guinea, Philippine natives, and some Polynesians from outlying Polynesian islands in Micronesia. This resulted in a diverse population which since the late 18th century had also included Europeans, Japanese, and Americans. The Southwest Islanders, who are culturally and linguistically distinct from the Paluans, are the only minority group. These are the group people of the Yap. Since the end of World War II, the major employer in Palau has been the government. First the U.S. Navy, then the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, and finally the government of Palau. Nevertheless, in the rural areas outside Koror, the subsistence economy is active. Palau has an urban population of almost 79%, where the rural is about 11%. Kiribati, officially known as the Republic of Kiribati, is an island country in the central Pacific Ocean. Of the 33 islands of Kiribati, only 20 are inhabited. These islands are scattered over a vast ocean area. Kiribati extends 1,800 miles eastward from the 16 Gilbert Islands, where the population is concentrated, to the Line Islands, of which 3 are inhabited. In between lie the islands of the Phoenix Group, which have no permanent population. Total land area is 313 miles squared. Kiribati is the most affected country in the world when it comes to climate change. The capital and government centers are Ambo, Bariki, Betio, all islets of South Tarawa and the North Gilberts. Kiribati and Tuvalu are formally joined as the Gilbert and Ellice Islands colonies. A few of the islands are compact with fringing reefs, but most are atolls. The largest atoll, and one of the largest in the world, is Kiritimati, which is Christmas Atoll in the Line Group, which has a land area of 150 square miles and accounts for almost half the country's total area. Kiritimati was used for the U.S. and British nuclear weapons testing in the 60s. It is now a large coconut plantation and fish farms, as well as several satellite telemetry stations. The rest of the atolls rise no higher than some 26 feet, making them vulnerable to changes in ocean level surfaces. By 1999, 2 unpopulated islets have been covered by the sea, along with many others that are now being drowned by the ocean currents and levels. The threat of rising sea levels, a theoretical result of global warming, would be disastrous for the islands of Kiribati. Average precipitation in the Gilbert Group ranges from 120 inches in the north to 40 inches in the south, but most of the islands are subject to drought conditions. The people of Kiribati are Micronesian, and the vast majority speak Gilbertese or Kiribati. English, which is the official language, is also widely spoken, especially on Tarawa. More than half of the population is Roman Catholic, and most of the rest is Kiribati Protestant. Kiribati has a president elected by the populace from among 3 or 4 candidates chosen by and from members of the national legislature, which is the unicameral House of Assembly. Local government is through elected island officials and councils. Vanuatu is located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean and is consisting of a chain of 13 principal and many smaller islands located about 500 miles west of Fiji and 1,100 miles east of Australia. The islands extend north-south for some 400 miles in a regular Y shape. Vanuatu achieved independence in 1980. The name Vanuatu means "our land forever" in many of the locally used Melanesian languages. The capital, largest city, and commercial center is Port Vila or Efete. Vanuatu has a diverse relief of topography. ranging from rugged mountains and high plateaus to rolling hills and low plateaus with coastal terraces and offshore coral reefs, which help characterize the islands. Sedimentary and coral limestones and volcanic rock are the majority landscape. Frequent earthquakes indicate structural instability. Active volcanoes are found on several islands. There are also several submarine volcanoes in the group, and some islands have solfataras or fumaroles that are volcanic vents spewing out hot gases. The highest point is Tabomanescena, which is 6,165 feet high. On Espiritu Santo, the largest island, there are two seasons, hot and wet from November to April, and cooler and drier from May to October. The indigenous population, called the Vanuatu, is overwhelmingly Melanesian, though some of the outlying islands have Polynesian populations. There are also small minorities of Europeans, Micronesians, Chinese, and Vietnamese. Roughly three-fourths of the population lives in rural areas, but since independence, the urban centers of Luganville and Port Vila have drawn a significant number of people attracted by better opportunities. More than 100 local Melanesian languages and dialects are spoken. Bislama, an English-based Melanesian pidgin, is the national language, and along with the English and French is one of the three official languages. Kava, beef, copra, timber, and cocoa are the most important exports. Australia, New Caledonia, Japan, and New Zealand are the main export destinations. Imports, mainly of machinery and transport equipment, food and live animals, and mineral fuels, come principally from Australia, Singapore, New Zealand, and Fiji. Samoa is a country in the central South Pacific Ocean among the westernmost of the island countries of Polynesia. According to legend, Samoa is known as the cradle of Polynesia because Savaii Island is said to be Hawaii, the Polynesian homeland. Samoan culture is undoubtedly central to Polynesian life, and its styles of music, dance, and visual art have gained renowned enthusiasm and acclaim throughout the Pacific Islands and the world. The country's international image is that of a tropical paradise inhabited by tourist-friendly, flower-wreathed peoples. Yet this belies the economic and social political challenges of this diverse and evolving Pacific microstate. Samoa gained its independence from New Zealand in 1962 after more than a century of foreign influence and domination, but it remains a member of the Commonwealth. The country was known as Western Samoa until 1997. Its capital and main commercial center is Apia on the island of Upolu. Savaii is the largest island, which covers 659 square miles and rises to a maximum elevation of 6,095 feet at Mount Sisili, a volcano in the island's approximate center. All the country's rivers are shallow and relatively short and radiate directly from the central highlands to the coast. The islands are rocky, formed by volcanic activity that progressed from east to west within the past 7 million years. They are ringed by coral reefs and shallow lagoons, except where the shorelines are marked by cliffs formed by lava flows. The climate is tropical and humid. Precipitation varies from more than 100 inches on the northern and western coasts to 300 inches inland. Temperatures vary very little, averaging 80 degrees Fahrenheit and ranging only between 73 and 86 throughout the year. Samoans are mainly Polynesian heritage, and about 9/10 of the population are ethnic Samoans. Euronesians, people mixed with European and Polynesian ancestry, account for most of the rest of the population, and only a tiny fraction are purely European. Samoan is the country's official language. Legislative activity is conducted in both Samoan and English, as if required by the Constitution. Samoan is believed to be among the oldest of the Polynesian tongues and is closely related to the Maori, Tahitian, Hawaiian, and Tongan tongues. Samoa was the first independent microstate in the Pacific region, and in 1970 it joined the Commonwealth. Samoa has a parliamentary government that blends Samoan and New Zealander traditions. Tonga, officially the Kingdom of Tonga, also called the Friendly Islands, is a country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of 170 islands divided into three main island groups: Tongatapu in the south, Ha'apai in the center, and Vava'u in the north. The summit of volcanic undersea mountains forms the two roughly parallel chains of the Tongan Islands. Most of the islands of the western chain are classified as high islands because they have been raised well above sea level by repeated volcanic activity. 4 of them are still active volcanoes. Some of the islands composed of lava formed by shield volcanoes such as Late and Kau have a hard cone-shaped surface and is not easily eroded. Others, such as Fanu'u, Falcon Island, were formed by more explosive volcanoes, and their surfaces, composed of ash and pumice, erode readily. Vanuatu has risen and disappeared repeatedly, owing its cycles to eruption and erosion. The low islands of the eastern chain have been capped by coral polyps and foraminifera, which are marine organisms that have calcareous shells, which build coral, rock, and limestone reefs. The continuing growth of coral counteracts the sea's erosion of the reefs and the islands enclosed by them. A protective reef surrounds Tonga Tapu Island. Many islands in the Vava'upu group lack such protection and are shrinking. The highest point in Tonga is 3,389 feet and is on Kau Island in the Hapai group. Nearly the entire population is of Polynesian ancestry. Tongans are closely related to Samoans and other Polynesians in culture and language, as well as genetic heritage. There is also a small amount of Melanesian influence through contact with Fiji. Intermarriage with Europeans is more common, especially as a result of the increasing outmigration of Tongans since the 1970s. 1/3 of Tonga's people now live in urban areas. The Tongan language is taught in primary schools and is the official language, in addition to English, which is studied as a second language. Agriculture is the mainstay of the Tongan economy. Squash, coconuts, bananas, and vanilla beans constitute the main cash crops, and other more important crops include yams, taro, cassava, maize, watermelons, pineapples, breadfruit, limes, and tomatoes. All land is essentially owned by the Tongan monarchy, but large estates have been divided among the country's nobles. Remittances from Tongans working overseas, especially in New Zealand and the United States as well as Australia, coupled with tourism, have both contributed significantly to the growth of the Tongan economy. Tuvalu, formerly the Ellis Islands, is a country in the west central Pacific Ocean. It is composed of 9 small coral islands scattered in a chain lying approximately northwest to southeast over a distance of 420 miles. The group includes both atolls and reef islands. The islands are low-lying, most being between 13 to 16 feet above sea level. There are no rivers. Rain catchment and wells provide the only fresh water there. Rainfall averages 100 inches in the north and 125 inches in the south. Prevailing winds are southeast trades. Westerly storms occur from November to February. Daytime temperatures can range from 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the soils are so porous, agriculture is very limited. Coconut palms thrive, and breadfruit trees as well. Pandanus, taro, and banana trees are also grown. Pigs and chickens are raised, and seabirds, fish, and shellfish are caught for food. The islands increasingly depend on imported food. The Tuvaluans are Polynesian, and their language, Tuvaluan, is closely related to Samoan. Niue, however, was heavily settled in prehistoric times by Micronesians from the Gilbert Islands, now Kiribati. English is taught in schools and widely used. The vast majority of the population belongs to the Church of Tuvalu. The country of Tuvalu depends heavily on foreign aid. Its imports are mostly food, fuel, and manufactured goods. Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan are among the country's most used trade partners. Tuvalu is a constitutional monarchy with a commonwealth, with the British monarch, through a governor-general, as head of state. The government is parliamentary democracy with unicameral legislature elected by universal adult suffrage. There are no political parties. The prime minister is chosen by and from the legislature. Tuvalu is a member of the South Pacific Forum. Nauru Island Country is in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of a raised coral island located in the southeastern Micronesia area 25 miles south of the equator. Nauru has no official capital, but government offices are located in the district of Yarnum. Most of Nauru rises somewhat abruptly from the ocean, and there are no harbors or protected anchorages. A fairly fertile but relatively narrow belt encircles the island and surrounds the shallow inland Bauda Lagoon. Farther inland, coral cliffs rise to a plateau of 100 feet above sea level, with the highest point being about 213 feet. The plateau is largely composed of rock phosphate leached from guano or bird droppings. The mineral deposits cover more than two-thirds of the island and are pinnacle-shaped outcrops of limestone that give the landscape a forbidding, otherworldly appearance. Nauru's climate is tropical, with daytime temperatures in the low 80s, tempered by ocean breezes. Rainfall averaging only 80 inches annually is extremely variable, and prolonged droughts do occur due to the fact that they are so close to the equator. The only local available water is from root catchment, and most other water is imported as ballasts on ships returning to Nauru for loads of phosphate. There are no rivers or streams. Soils are generally poor and highly porous, and the irregular rainfall limits cultivation to the coastal belt and the lagoon's fringe. Phosphate mining has ravaged the interior of the island, leaving about 4/5 of it uninhabitable and uncultivatable. Phosphate has been mined on Nauru since 1907. For decades, it was Nauru's main resource and sole export, dominating the island's economy, and its quality was the highest in the world. The phosphate industry and government services together provided almost all the island's salaried employment. Most of the island's residents are indigenous Nauruans. There are small numbers of Kiribati, Australians, New Zealanders, Chinese, and Tuvaluans. Many members of the latter two groups are recruited as workers by the phosphate industry. Nauruan is the national language. No adequate written grammar of the language has ever been compiled, and its relationships to other Micronesian languages are not well understood. English is widely spoken. Nauru is considered one of the most westernized countries in the South Pacific. Nauru's population is 100% urban due to infrastructure and scarcity of water. Virtually all food, water, and manufacturing goods are imported. The Solomon Islands are a country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of a double chain of volcanic islands and coral atolls in Melanesia. The country comprises most of the Solomon Islands chain, with the exception of Buka and Bougainville, two islands at the northwestern end that form an autonomous region of Papua New Guinea. Once a British protectorate, Solomon Islands achieved independence as a republic in 1978. Honiara, on the north coast of Guadalcanal Island, is Solomon Islands' capital and largest city. The main islands of the group are large and rugged, rising up to 7,644 feet above sea level at Mount Papamanassu and Guadalcanal. They lie in two parallel chains running north, west, and southeast. The southern chain includes Bella Laville, the New Georgia Islands, Savo, Guadalcanal. The northern is Choiseul, Santa Isabel, and Malaita. The chains converge on San Cristobal, which is Makita Island. There are two hot springs on Savo, where a volcano last erupted in the 1840s. The Solomon Islands have a number of other volcanoes. Tenakula in the Santa Cruz group and Cavachi, a submarine volcano near New Georgia, have erupted regularly every few years, and the Simbo Island has a Solfatara volcanic area that vents only hot vapors and sulfurous gases. Earthquakes and destructive cyclones occur regularly. Most of the people live in small rural villages. They engage mainly in subsistence and gardening, pig raising, and fishing, but are also involved in the cash economy on a minor scale. The vast majority of the population is ethnically Melanesian. Polynesians, who form a small minority, live mainly on outlying atolls, principally on Tong Java Atoll, Balana, Renell Island, and the Reef Islands, the Stewart Islands, Tikopia, and Anuta. There are also small numbers of Chinese and Europeans and of the Gilbertese from Micronesia who were resettled on Giza and Vagina Islands between 1955 and 1971. This was done by British administrators seeking to alleviate overpopulation of the Gilbert Islands, which are now Kiribati. The Solomon Islands are a constitutional monarchy, with the British monarch represented by a governor-general serving as the formal head of state. Still, the country, a member of the Commonwealth, is independent, and the governor-general is appointed on the advice of the unicameral national parliament. Micronesia is a country in the western Pacific Ocean. It is composed of more than 600 islands and islets in the Caroline Islands archipelago and is divided roughly along cultural and linguistic lines into the states from west to east: Yap, Chuuk, Pohnpei, Corsairs. The capital is Palikir on the island of Pohnpei. The islands are of two general types: high volcanic islands that support a large variety of plant forms, and low-lying coral atolls with poorer soil. Yap Island is distinctive in that it was formed by folds of the Earth's crust, and it is continental in geological composition. The climate is tropical with high humidity and a mean annual temperature in the low 80s. There is little seasonal variation in temperature. Rainfall averages about 120 inches per year throughout the area, although Pohnpei receives more than 200 inches yearly. There are distinct rainy and dry seasons, the latter occurring during the height of the northeasterly trade wind season between December and April. Yap, which alone is situated in a monsoon area, has westerly winds for part of the year. Numerous typhoons originate in the east each year, usually spinning off to the northwest toward Yap and the Mariana Islands and seldom striking any of the other islands. Settlements are almost without exception located near the coast. Volcanic islands, with their richer soil, support many different species of plant life. On coral atolls, the predominant forms of vegetation are the coconut palm, along with pandanus and breadfruit trees. Atoll dwellers typically locate their houses on the lagoon side of the island. The people of the Federated States, while generally classified as Micronesian, are very diverse culturally and linguistically. The people of Yap Island speak Yapese, a language only distantly related to the other languages of the area. Inhabitants of the coral atolls in Yap State are similar in language and culture to the people of Chuuk, although Chuukese and Yapese languages are not mutually intelligible. Both Chuuk and Pohnpei contain several dialects, and other inhabitants of the other two islands, of Nakuro and Kapagamangariki, two atolls of the southwest portion of Pohnpei State, are Polynesian and speak language unrelated to Pohnpeian. Only Corsairs has complete ethnic linguistic unity. Altogether, 8 local languages are recognized as distinct, and dialectal differences in the outlying atolls add further variety. About half the total population lives in Chuuk State. Pohnpei has about one-third of the population, and Yap and Corsairs have about one-tenth each. In the late 20th century, there began a trend toward migration to the towns for employment and education. The population growth rate is one of the highest in the region. Almost the entire population is Christian. More than half the people are Roman Catholic, and the other 2/5 are Protestant. The country has no official language, but English is spoken widely in the government and commerce. Subsistence farming and fishing are the principal economic activities. The main staples are breadfruit, taros, coconuts, bananas, but yams, cassava, and sweet potatoes are also grown on some of the islands. Poultry, pigs, and dogs are sometimes also raised for food. The main source of revenue is U.S. government grant aid, which continues under the Compact of Free Association that was signed in 1982 and revised and reintroduced in 2003. The major source of income in the service sector, this also includes government employment. The government also derives income from the sale of fishing rights. But in July 1947, the Carolines, together with the Marshalls and Northern Marianas, became the United Nations Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands under U.S. administration. They were designated a strategic area to allow the United States to set up military bases as deemed necessary. Consequently, ultimate responsibility for the trust territory rested with the UN Security Council rather than the UN General Assembly, which was the case with other trust territories. Under Micronesia's new constitution that was drafted in 1975, it became the basis for the federated government that went into effect in 1979. Under this constitution, the government of Federated States of Micronesia consists of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. The president and vice president are elected by the legislature, the unicameral National Congress, which is very similar to the United States style of government with small varying differences. Thank you for watching this slide presentation. I do ask you to please forgive me for any mispronunciation of any of the names and countries and also cities that are involved in this presentation. I am not a linguist expert, so I may not be able to pronounce everything correctly. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.